everyone, I'm Lauren Blair Donovan, and this is Good Grief. This is a fun episode because 20 years ago, this episode wouldn't even exist. And what I mean by that is the topic is how to discuss or not discuss death, like the announcements of someone dying or your feelings on social media. 20 years ago, there was social media, but I think it was mostly like Friendster. I don't know anyone that was on that. Is that just an urban like social media legend? And also, I don't think I would have been able to make a video on anything about grief because YouTube did not exist 20 years ago. So this is like weirdly the most contemporary video I'll ever do. It's not timeless. Like I couldn't time travel to like the 1980s and show people like this video. They'd be like, what are you talking about, you crazy lady? But yes, so death and social media didn't used to be a thing. Nowadays, we kind of get all of our news from social media. So back in the day, we used to get our news from a newspaper or like more on TV, which we still do, but I would wager that most people find out what is happening based on like what's happening on Twitter or Facebook, which is scary because there's some bad information out there. But if you notice, when there is a news report of, say, something like a car accident or a mass shooting, a lot of the time the victims' names are not released because they are notifying their next of kin first. And I think that's a really good precedent that we should keep in mind when talking about the deaths of people we love. If you're not an immediate family member and you know that like your friend died, maybe don't post it online until the family announces it. Because the reason being is they are probably contacting extended family and other important people in their lives. And even if you don't know them, if you tag your friend like in a post or in a photo saying rest in peace, their cousin could see that come up on their newsfeed and they're like, what? My cousin Cheryl died? Like, what? I didn't know this. And they're going to feel, in addition to immensely sad that the fact that their cousin died, they're also going to be hurt that their aunt or their grandma or whoever would have called them didn't call them first. When they were going to, they just hadn't gotten around to it. Phone trees can take a minute because sometimes it takes a while to actually get a hold of someone. You can be playing phone tag. It's like, hey, gotta tell you something, which probably sounds a little strange, playing phone tag about such sad news, but of course that's gonna happen. That's life. It's like the least fun game of phone tag ever. It's like, call me back so I can tell you your brother died. Like, I'm his wife, I'm your sister-in-law. Like, who wants to play that game? No one. But yeah, it can take a minute to make sure that everyone who needs to know face-to-face or on the phone will find out. And nobody wants to read that their cousin or their aunt, whoever died on Facebook. So even if you were like the deceased best friend, wait for their sibling or their parent to maybe post something or for some kind of obituary post to go out that's announcing the funeral. These are like difficult times. What's funny is I didn't really even think about this until about 5 years ago. And I was reading a list of things that like to be mindful of when there's a new death or people are newly grieving. And this was one of them because my dad died like closer to the Friendster era. So I mean, like I didn't have Friendster. Maybe I had a MySpace page. I'm not totally sure. But like I definitely wasn't on like AOL Instant Messenger leaving up away messages. It's like, my dad died. Maybe I did. I doubt I did. I hope I didn't. That's weird. But yeah, it's weird because we don't really think about social media. I think still sort of feels, you know, like a fun time, even though I don't think any of us actually have that much fun on social media. That's another topic for another time. But this is how we get information, and it made a lot of sense because it's the easiest way. If you announce on Facebook, for instance, that someone passed away, you're going to be able to hit probably most people that know them in their life, since literally everyone and their mothers and their grandmothers are on Facebook nowadays. When my mom passed away almost 3 years ago, my brother was living in one state, my mom was living in one state but died in another state, and I was living in a completely different state. None of us were in the same states. We also were going to let her hospital, which was a university hospital, keep the body for a little bit for research purposes. And so we weren't calling a funeral home anytime soon, but we had to get the information out that she had passed away. We weren't going to keep it like a secret. I did my best to go through, because I was at her house at the time, to go through her not super updated address book and call whoever I could, including people I had not seen since childhood, and be like, call your friend's daughter. It's like, hi, I'm your friend's daughter. Bad news. Those were awkward calls. Luckily, they actually went as well as those could calls go, and it was nice to reconnect with some people, but I didn't post the second she was dead. I think we posted 2 days later. I mean, quick share, it was really hard to post that. I probably could have posted 12 hours before I did, but it was very surreal and very real. It made it real because something about having that be put down in words and picking out the photos that we were going to use to highlight her life, I guess. I didn't like it. I think it definitely took me a couple hours to get the courage or get over the anxiety of putting it out there for my friends to see, for my brother's friends to see, since I was going to tag him in it, as well as both of my mom's Facebook accounts, because she lost the password to one, and I'm not entirely sure if she added all her friends to the second account. Yeah, my mom was many wonderful things, but I did not eulogize her Facebook ability skills at all. I'm super thankful, though, that none of my aunts or cousins or best friends wrote on my wall, "Sorry for your loss, sucks to lose your mom, sucks she's dead now, XOXO. Like, no one did that, so the cat wasn't out of the bag until I located everyone I could possibly think to talk to. And I know for a fact we didn't get, everyone, but we did our best, and I'm very thankful that we had the timelines to do that. So I think the post that I read several years ago was completely correct. It felt correct when I read it, but having lived through it, it was good that we got to announce it and someone else didn't. And it's also like, it felt, okay, low key, it felt a little tacky to announce on Facebook. I'm not gonna lie, but at the end of the day, I got over it because there wasn't a better way. Like I said, we did not immediately need a funeral home. None of us lived in the same state. So, and also even if we did, legit question, do people read actual newspapers anymore? And if they're reading their news online, do they even look at the obituaries, the local obituaries? I'm very confused about how the funeral industry maybe has changed with this. And I feel like whenever I read obituaries online, it's because someone I know on Facebook is sharing a link of someone that they love that recently passed away, and the link is to their obituary. You can love Facebook or not, and I'll probably stand by you in either direction, but we do make these life announcements like marriages and engagements and hey, I'm sick with this and that, or I have to get this surgery, or I have a kid now, someone died. It's how we live life, love it or hate it. It's hard too, because we don't have an Emily Post telling us how to live our lives on the internet. We really need her. Where are you at? I'm assuming she's a Zoomer, so her name's probably not Emily, it's probably Emma. Maybe it's her last name is Postmates, Emma Postmates. I hear what a bad joke that was, but I'm gonna stand by it anyway. Emma Postmates, where you at? Come on, help us be better people on the internet. In regards to how people post in terms of whether it's the announcement or whether it's in the future, how they commemorate or don't commemorate someone online, I think that's something that we also need an Emma Postmates for, because I think that there are a lot of judgments about how people rehash their grief. I will be the first to admit that if you like are airing your dirty laundry and doing passive aggressive texts about your terrible partner, I get the popcorn so fast and I love every second of it. And yes, I'm judging you, especially if you don't explain why you got back together with this terrible person, that you're like saying that they don't deserve you in these like little textiles that are like memes or whatever. Like, tell me why you got back together with the scumbag. I deserve to know. You clued me in. I don't judge people though if they overpost about someone who's passed away or if they never post. I think you can see it both ways. But I've heard people 100%, maybe not even judge, but question with a little bit of superiority that someone's posting too much about someone who died. I don't love that. There really isn't a right or wrong way to grieve. And I think in this time of social media, we use it to both our detriment, but also to our betterment, because it's basically a mirror of how we feel or how we want to feel. Yes, we curate false versions of ourselves on social media, fair enough, but it's also a big psychological experiment though. And if someone's overposting, you know what, maybe they're narcissist, maybe they need attention for all the wrong reasons. Unless they have a history of that, hell, even if they have a history of that, I think it's time to exercise compassion, because if someone lost someone, they're going to be a little bit crazy no matter what's going on. It's a really hard thing to process. And I think sometimes people overpost like about how much they miss someone or photos of them or like bad song lyrics that are like really vague about what they're even about. I think it's either a cry for help, like someone's effectively saying that they're lonely and they're sad and they need to work this out somehow. And it might be a really misguided way to do that, but at the end of the day, we need to kind of listen when people say they're hurting. We don't like to do that as a society, like at all. But I'd also argue that it's not always a cry for help as much as it's trying to make sense of what happened. As I mentioned, it was a little difficult for me to post and even just form the words to post that my mom had died, because it made it real. And I think because social media, even if it's a funhouse mirror and it's not completely accurate to how we live our lives, it is a mirror. And there is something to be said about seeing in print that like something has happened to you, whether it's happy news, like you're having a baby, or whether someone really important to you died. And I think it could be an exercise in trying to accept that someone died if they keep posting about it. Look, everyone's different. We're all crazy. We're all byproducts of our environment. We all have both wonderful and terrible tools at our, disposal. I'm just kind of giving food for thought because I've heard people, complain about overshares. And like I said, usually I'm in the Judge Judy corner about that stuff, but death kind of gets a pass from me for the most part. Sometimes people don't post at all, and that's okay. Some people, depending on if they have a history of this with their social media habits or not, they just don't want those feelings on display and they want to deal with it privately, or they want to make sense of it before they say anything, or they don't want the attention that comes with it. I think all of that's completely valid. Like I said, to each their own. Like there isn't a right way to do this. So if someone's not posting, it doesn't mean that they didn't love their dad. It just means that they are either not in a space where they're ready to talk about it at all, or they are and they just don't want to do it on the Book of Faces or Twitter or whatever, or Snapchat. God, I'm not on Snapchat. Okay, do people do snaps about their dead relatives? I'm laughing at myself because I'm like, don't judge people on social media. And I'm like, no, Snapchat, that'd be stupid. That'd be ridiculous. I'm judging what I don't understand because I was on Snapchat for 5 minutes and I was like, this is stupid. For some reason, am I wrong? Does that feel like it'd be weird? I think tell me in the comments. Am I a monster for thinking that it'd be weird to snap about a relative's death? I don't know. I think something that people, well-intending people do on social media when they're reading about someone posting about the death of someone that they loved So they don't really read the caption. They just kind of have this like emotional triggered response where they want to be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. For instance, I used to post about my dad's death every anniversary. I don't really do that anymore for a myriad of reasons. But one of the reasons that initially made me not want to do it anymore was because, like, I would post something really nice about him and I would be like talking about what a good influence he was on me and how many years it had been. And while you never totally get over it, I'm fine now, but like, I'm just thankful that I had this great man in my life, and whatever else has gone wrong or however short the amount of time I got with him, I'm well adjusted because he was such a great parent. And people read that and they say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, call me if you need anything. Like, you're so strong, which you know I hate. I have a video on that. Please, I'll link that below. Like, I hate that word. But it's like, I don't need that attention if I'm saying like, hey, this sucked. Of course, it's always gonna suck, but I'm fine. And I'm just thankful he was my dad. Like, you don't need to like call a hotline with how to deal with me. You don't need to like shower me with attention. I just wanted to commemorate his memory. And then it becomes about me, where it's like, am I okay? And it's like, I said I'm okay. Like, when people tell you who they are, believe them. I said I'm fine. I just wanted to talk about how awesome my dad was. Now you're doing the thoughts and prayers stuff for me. Like, that's dumb. Like, it's dumb in general, but it's really dumb in this situation. Like, read the room. So I think if you're seeing people post about their dead relatives, especially on like birthdays or anniversaries or what have you, like, read what they have to say and cater your response appropriately. Don't just do like a copy paste, like, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss, when it's like, dude, it's been like 1,020 years. I just said I was fine. It's always gonna sting, but I'm fine. Like, read the room, read the caption, read the status, read the tweet, read the Snapchat. I don't really know how Snapchat works. I don't think that's it, but I've made that point already. Guys, listen more, listen more, listen more. Just listen. And you know, this last one is to each their own, because every situation is going to be different. But I think it's just worth noting that I try to have the utmost respect if I'm posting about someone I loved who was not my family. I did lose a couple friends as a young adult, and I'm friends with their moms and some siblings. I'm really careful about how I commemorate them publicly. And what I mean by that is these were both very charming, likable dudes who died. So there's really not a lot of embarrassing things I could like joke about that would embarrass their mothers. I don't mean it that way, but I'm highlighting this because I imagine some of you watching might have that situation. People who die very young often make mistakes before they've had time to mature into the wonderful human beings that we all clearly have gotten to become. The younger people are when they die, the more likely it could be that they were still growing up, so to speak, in some ways. So worth considering. But I also, having kind of been on both sides, I guess what I mean is I never get offended when like people post about my dad. I feel like most people just post that are his family, like his sisters, which feels very fair game. That was their immediate family too. And it never upsets me. It always delights me. And I've had some of my mom's friends post on my wall memories of her, and I super appreciate it. I prefer to not be out of sight, out of mind, and I prefer to share the memories. So this doesn't bother me, but I have heard of people who being a little bit annoyed at people from outside the family co-opting a narrative or trying to compete for attention. Human nature is super fascinating. And again, I think if you're grieving, to each their own. But I will say that there is a video coming up where I kind of talk about the differences in grieving when it's immediate family versus friendship. And some of it's razor thin lines, depending on what your circumstances are, fair enough. But again, having been on both sides, there's just more history with a family. There's more knowing the ins and outs and secrets to some extent. With friendship too, but different. It's hard to talk about this stuff, guys, because it's like everyone's so different. I could literally name 5 of my friends and I have 5 completely different relationships with them. So it's hard to find like a common denominator that I both feel comfortable with and that I can like convey to you guys without like offending anyone. But like, you don't mess with people's families, and especially if it's like an untimely death. I think it's a good thing to not at least try to steal the spotlight from a grieving mom. I don't know. I always try to like say kind things in messages, like private messages. And with one of my friends, it feels super fair game to post about him on the anniversary, which I actually haven't done in years because I'm kind of, for similar reasons with my dad. I mean, I just don't want the attention that of people not reading posts anymore. But like my friend's mom seems completely, at least from what I can tell, charmed by her son's friends remembering him all these years later. But I'm still just cautious. And, you know, there's going to be another video on this, but it's like, it is complicated, but people have different relationships to people. And sometimes death can be, for lack of a better word, excuse my French, but a bit of a dick weighing contest, like who knew the person the best and who was their best friend and da 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 da. And it's just like, if we put that on social media, it can be a little intense. All I'm saying is just, grief isn't rational. I have your back. I'm not going to judge you, but at the same token, try to remember that you're not the only one grieving when someone dies, and try to just be sensitive and compassionate and loving with anything that you say about someone. Just practicing mindfulness and practicing service in the sense of not just thinking about yourself, but thinking about others is always a great way to live your life, always. And again, no judgment if you forget, but consider other people's feelings. That's more or less it for today's video. I've only had this experience really once because everyone else I knew who passed away, including my dad, died in the Friendster, if that was even real, era. So I've only read about it and experienced it firsthand kind of recently, almost 3 years ago. June will be 3 years since my mom passed away. So I'm a little bit of a novice with this, and I actually had at least a good experience regarding announcing. No one said anything crazy, and so far everybody's been cool about stuff that they post, and they're relatively cool about stuff I post besides not reading that I'm fine. I'm really curious if you have a story. I would love to read it in the comments, because as much as I'm trying to do this to help others, I would love to be helped myself. If there's something you can help me out with, if there's a blind spot that I'm missing because I haven't experienced it yet. I really want to normalize the dialogue of grief, and I want to hear about others' experiences. So by all means, I'm totally open to it. Please ask questions that you have. And all of my thoughts and beliefs here are just kind of based on my own experiences. They're not, mandates that this is how it happens for everyone, but which is all the more reason that I want to hear about your experiences. Anyways, I'm Lauren Blair Donovan. You can follow me at Blairosaurus_Rex on Instagram and Blairosaurus Rex on Twitter, because I'm difficult and have almost identical handles. And please subscribe, please like, please share if you know someone that could be helped by these videos. We just don't talk about grief enough, so it's up to me to try to change that. Kidding. I love it. It's my privilege. So please have a great day, and I will catch you next time. Bye.